Thank you, Professor Fang. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm honored to be here in Bo스턴컬리지 Global Korea project. I deeply appreciate your attendance. Even someone who came from New York, far from here. Today, I want to share with you a topic that I have written about my book, Semiconductor Sovereignty. Why semiconductors have been weaponized and how they are unfolding in 21st century during US-China conflict. We will explore the status and significance of the semiconductor industry. Let's start. The history of semiconductor development is quite ironic. The semiconductor industry, which played a crucial role in advancing technology from mechanical to electronic industries, found its catalyst in an unexpected place, the United States' defeat in the Vietnam War. Back in 1965, during the Vietnam War, the US initiated Operating Rolling Thunder, a massive bombing campaign aimed at crippling North Vietnam's transportation routes and military bases. However, the operation ended in strategic failure, pushing the US to deploy ground forces. This 9-year-long war left deep scars on the US, prompting fundamental changes in its military and defense strategy. A core aspect of this transformation was increased investment in semiconductor technology. During Operation Rolling Thunder, the US dropped a staggering 864,000 tons of bombs on North Vietnam, exceeding the total bombs dropped during the 3-year Korean War and even surpassing World War II's Pacific theater bombing. Despite this, the mission failed due to low bomb accuracy, primarily caused by unreliable missile technology. The weather condition in Vietnam, along with the shock of landing, caused a high failure rate in vacuum tube, electronic devices, which were soldered by hand. This made the accuracy problem worse. By the time of the Vietnam War, North Vietnam had sophisticated anti-craft systems and radar, which led to high rate of American aircraft losses. The US realized that precision-guided weapons were the future. This shift required significant advancement in microelectronics, and it was spearheaded by William Perry, who was appointed as the Undersecretary of Defense of Research and Engineering in 1977 Carter administration. Perry championed the use of microelectronics and memory chips to create guided weapons. The innovation is guided weapons like the Tomahawk, cruise missile, and stealth technology were made possible by the development of semiconductor technology. Silicon Valley's growth and defense system reforms complemented each other. The integration of sensors and communication devices into weapons systems showed the potential of microelectronics, which would lead to space development and expansion. This transformation highlighted the importance of accuracy in weaponry, which was directly linked to computing power or processing capacity. The US had to catch up in terms of military power, especially as the Soviet Union had amassed more tanks and aircraft, many of which were directed toward Western Europe. Quality, not just quantity, became crucial for the US military, and William Perry played a pivotal role in this transformation. The Vietnam War experience made the US understand the significance of precision-guided weapons. Today, the semiconductor industry is a global powerhouse with countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Japan, and China producing the majority of memory chips and processors. Taiwan's TSMC and South Korea's Samsung Electronics, SK hynix play critical roles. The US once contributed in creating jobs and development in East Asia by establishing semiconductor assembly plant here, plant there. However, Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, signaled a shift in US policy indicating that the previous approach of engaging with China might no longer be sustainable. Sullivan mentioned that the traditional assumptions about economic growth and inequality reduction through market-driven globalization didn't hold true anymore, leading to economic disparities in the US. He pointed out that China had heavily subsidized key industries, including clean energy, quantum computing, digital infrastructure, and advanced biotechnology, which posed a threat to America's future technological dominance. In conclusion, the semiconductor industry, born from the ash of the Vietnam War, is now a vital component of modern technology and a strategic asset for nations with the United States, in particular, emphasizing manufacturing. The rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War led to significant developments in technology and military power. In response to Soviet Union's launch of the first artificial satellite, we called Sputnik, in 1957, the US established the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency in 1958 and renamed as DARPA in 1972, aiming to invest heavily in semiconductor technology. This strategic move not only bolstered military capabilities, but also advanced scientific and technological fields like computing. DARPA's role was to select and fund projects through computing among various research institutions and defense companies, fostering long-term research for groundbreaking technologies. Many game-changing innovations, such as the internet, the computer mouse, microwave oven, carbon fiber, GPS, and drones, can trace their roots back to DARPA projects. Without DARPA and the influence of key figures like William Perry, who served as Deputy Secretary of Defense from 1977 to 1981, Silicon Valley might not have flourished as it did. Perry recognized that the development of guided missiles by the US would challenge the Soviet Union's military and financial resources. To counter the US missile threat, the Soviet had to invest a substantial amount in missile defense systems. The shift in the arms race, driven by advanced technology, eventually contributed to the end of the Cold War. In 1986, after decades of intense military competition, President Ronald Reagan and Soviet Communist Party General Secretary Mikhail Gorbachev met in Reykjavik, Iceland, marking the beginning of arms reduction talks. The Soviet Union's recognition of the importance of semiconductor technology and the changing landscape of military systems played a significant role in bringing them to the negotiation table. While the Soviet Union attempted to create its version of Silicon Valley in Zenograd near Moscow, their focus on espionage and a preference for centralized technology development couldn't keep pace with America's advanced semiconductor technology. From the iconic Russia's moon circled Earth headline in 1957 to the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, merely 34 years passed. The period witnessed a dramatic shift in the global balance of power, in part driven by advancements in semiconductor technology and military strategy. Do you remember the Gulf War, 1991? Yeah. The Gulf War, which took place from August 1990 to February 1991, was a significant milestone in the history of warfare. It brought the reality of war into the living rooms of people worldwide through live television broadcast, making it seem like a surreal video game to many. During Operation Desert Shield, led by the United States, cutting-edge technology played a pivotal role. The US had heavily invested in advanced weaponry, particularly guided and cruise missiles, benefiting from innovations like semiconductor technology. This investment paid off and led to a resounding victory for the multinational coalition. What made this victory stand out was the integration of semiconductor chips into military hardware. For instance, the AIM-7 missile, which had a dismal only 9.2% kill rate during the Vietnam War, was now equipped with these chips, significantly improving its accuracy. During the Gulf War in 1991, the kill rate soared to an impressive 59.1%. This remarkable progress was the outcomes of substantial investment in semiconductor technology, driven in part by organizations like DARPA. The Gulf War served as a turning point in modern warfare, underscoring the importance of technology in achieving military objectives. It wasn't just a display of firepower, but also a demonstration of how investment in technology, specifically semiconductors, could reshape the outcome of conflicts. Looking ahead, the question arises: has the United States globalization strategy succeeded in the 3 decades since the collapse of the Soviet Union? Some experts, such as Professor Stephen Watt, a renowned realist, argue that the US's attempt to promote democracy pushed by force and the expectation of global market expansion have not yielded the anticipated result, challenging the effectiveness of their globalization strategy. Over the past 30 years, the United States became the world leader after the Soviet Union's collapse. They outsourced manufacturing to countries like China for cost savings, which also raised environmental concerns. The US might have grown complacent after weakening Japan in the 1985 Plaza Agreement. Professor Stephen Watt believes one of the US's key mistakes was ignoring China's growth. China and the US became economically interdependent, with their trade volume going from 10 billion in 1980 to over 600 billion in 2023. China's rapid growth, with income per person increasing 25-fold from the 1980 to 2023, began to challenge the US. By 2010, China's GDP surpassed Japan's. Many US manufacturing plants, especially semiconductor factories, moved to countries like China, Taiwan, and South Korea. Even each giant like Apple rely on these countries for chip production. This foreign dependence in the semiconductor industry stems from globalization strategies and the massive capital required or these high-tech factories. In 2001, the United States pushed for China's entry into the World Trade Organization, WTO, as part of its globalization strategy, despite China's non-market economy status due to its communist government. This move was motivated by the belief that China's inclusion in the global trade order would lead to more adherence to global norms and potentially deepen its democracy. The US hoped that by integrating China into the international trading system, it would encourage China to adopt democratic values and follow trade rules. However, the outcomes was different than expected. Despite not always abiding by international trade rules, China's export grew significantly after joining the WTO, rising from 2% in 2002 to 15% in 2022, expanding its global market presence. South Korea also joined the US globalization strategy by signing the US-Korea Free Trade Agreement in 2007. However, the idea of free trade faced challenges, especially when President Trump introduced America First policies in 2017, disrupting the era of free trade. Concerns about growing trade deficit and dependence on China had been raised in the US since President Obama's tenure, leading to a shift away from globalism. The hope that globalization, driven by free trade, would promote democracy clashed with the reality that it expanded China's market more than expected. China's ambition in semiconductor production became evident with the rise of companies like SMIC, aiming to rival Taiwan's TSMC. China aimed to produce 70% of its consumed semiconductors domestically by 2025, even though it imports 80% of its current supply. China has heavily subsidized its semiconductor industry, with government funding reaching at least $23 billion over 3 years. Xi Jinping's strong leadership played a crucial role in these efforts. Critics noted how Xi, before his ascent to power, was considered a compromiser, but became more assertive. These developments highlight the complexities of US-China relations in the context of globalization. Personal experience meeting Xi Jinping in 2010 revealed a different side of his personality, emphasizing the depth relations between South and North Korea. He stated, "Blood is thicker than water. advocating for Korean dialogue. These meetings left a lasting impression for me. China's semiconductor industry has been major changes with different leaders. It can be divided into 4 periods. Mao Zedong's time, Deng Xiaoping's era, China joining the WTO, and Xi Jinping's leadership. From 1957 to 1978, semiconductor growth was slow due to economic plans and the chaos of Mao's Cultural Revolution. Between 1978 to 2000, despite some investment, the industry didn't succeed. From 2000 to 2015, China's semiconductor industry grew significantly due to globalization and increased businesses activity by anti-WTO. In 2015, Xi Jinping declared semiconductor development as a key tool for competition with the US in technology. In August 2022, the White House announced the CHIPS and Science Act, a significant law aimed at strengthening semiconductor manufacturing capacity and advancing advanced technology in the United States. This law involves a $53 billion investment primarily focused on supporting the semiconductor industry and enhancing technological competitiveness through increased federal scientific agency support. The debate is ongoing about whether the US semiconductor law is aimed at safeguarding the national security of the United States and its allied nations, or if it is primarily intended to maintain US global influence. Chinese smartphone manufacturer of Huawei impact in the United States with the Mate 60 Pro, the situation has raised questions about the effectiveness of US sanctions on China. In 2020, South Korea and Japan also experienced a trade dispute. Japan suddenly imposed export restrictions on key materials used in semiconductor manufacturing, causing significant tension. At that time, I served as the Ministry of SMEs and Startups. We held daily high-level meetings to devise strategies to counter Japan's export restrictions. While the industry initially faced uncertainty, it eventually stabilized by diversifying sources and developing in-house technologies. Ultimately, Japan's export restrictions ended up strengthening South Korean companies, and 3 years later, the situation returned to normal. Considering what happened between South Korea and Japan, I believe that it is crucial to re-evaluate the effectiveness of the US sanctions against China. What I mean by re-evaluation is to precisely narrow target, in the other words, in terms of adopting a small yard and high fence approach. The US can raise the fences higher while reducing the size of yard. Besides, overly broad sanctions can be less effectiveness and strain alliances with other countries. Particularly, in the case of South Korea, economic difficulties caused by such sanctions could lead to public disappointment and potentially weaken the long-term strength of the US alliance. In the semiconductor industry, South Korea export only 7% to the United States and over 40% to China. In this context, it is essential for US policymakers to carefully consider the implication in the ongoing US-China conflict. Finally, semiconductors are like a team sport. Therefore, it's important for democratic countries, especially the allies of the United States, to work together with harmonious policies for their respective supply chains. Preserving this harmony and unity among democratic nations is something we need to focus on from now on. Nowadays, AI is extensively utilized in various aspects of human life. Also, AI cannot be created without semiconductions. With AI, restructuring of semiconductor manufacturing is also accelerating. Countries around the world are fiercely competing to secure semiconductor sovereignty. And this competition is directly linked to national security. Therefore, in order for the United States to maintain its position as a semiconductor superpower, consideration and management of allies in the Northeast Asian region are particularly very important. This is a matter of great importance, not only for the future of the United States, but also for global democracy. The reason I published the book, Semiconductor Sovereignty, is also here. I wanted to address this issue not only from the perspective of the United States, but also from the perspective of its ally, South Korea. The English version of the book will be available soon. I believe that with the release of the English version, more people will be interested in the significance and role of semiconductor superpowers in the United States. Thank you.